Chapter 7. Are there limits to what we can know? Are there limits to cognition? We call this the axis of knowing, or the fruit of, or this activity, we could also call it cognition. Yeah? So this is the axis of cognition or science. Yeah? Is there a limit to what we can know in this model? Just by looking at the board, what do you think? Is there a limit to cognition? No. The only limit to cognition is how much of the world have I observed and how much have I thought about. Is there anything preventing me from observing the world and thinking about it? Only the limitations that I'm willing to accept. So friends, we'd have to say honestly, there really is no limit to what we can know. Only the limit that I am willing to accept because I'm lazy and I don't want to develop my capacities to observe, or because I'm lazy and I don't want to think about it. Now, let's pose the question in a different framework. Can any one of us know everything? Probably not, yes. But wouldn't it be fun to know everything? Maybe or maybe not. You know, there are some people who think that they know everything.
Some of us have the next best thing.
What's that?
Librarians know how to get to almost anything.
Yes, okay, good. So, but you say, but there really is there's nothing restricting me except the restrictions which I'm willing to accept. There's nothing preventing me from observing and thinking about anything I want to, unless I live in a world where I'm completely confined. Yeah? If I'm confined in a realm where I can't observe, I can still think. A person who's kept in a cell in darkness can still think. However, the range of their observation will be limited. And they will have to develop other faculties to extend their capacity for new observation. Yeah? Imagination will become very important to such people. But one can say that there really is no artificial limit on what I can know. Only the limit that I'm willing to accept. So ultimately, the answer to the question, are there limits to cognition? The answer is no. There's really no limit. Now, there are people who will tell you, you know what, there are some questions you can't ask, because there's some questions you'll never know. You'll never know what happens when you die, you'll never know whether there's a God or not, and you'll never know other things. You know? So there's a limit. Yeah? But friends, why should we believe those things? Why should we say why should we say, okay, you're right, okay, I'll stay in the box and I won't do any new observing or new thinking. But why should we accept that? As modern human beings, we don't want to. No longer are we content with belief, we want to know. Yeah? We want to know what happens after death. We want to know where we go when we go to sleep. We want to know, did we live before? Yeah? We want to know, are there spiritual beings or not? Is this just some fantasy that our ancestors concocted, or did they actually perceive gnomes and fairies and elementals? Yeah? Did they actually perceive angels? Did God really speak to Moses in the burning bush? How will we know? So we could say those experiences were had and recorded in past by human beings, and some people today are still having those experiences. Whether I have those experiences or not depends on whether I'm willing to cultivate the capacity to perceive and willing to develop the intuition to think more actively. So the limit that I'm willing to accept is really the limit that I mean, there's nothing preventing me from developing deeper capacities of intuition and deeper capacities of perception. Yeah. So ultimately, I am only bound by my own limitation, particularly because we're free, at least in this country at the moment, to explore the world of ideas and the world of experience. We are still capable of gathering tremendous insights. Yes? Question? No? No. But Rudolf Steiner says there's something on the board which is still a problem. This idea of the thing in itself. Yeah. Now, a thing in itself was the idea that Kant had. Remember, we've still got to get Kant out of the way because he's still in the background and he's still polluting our thinking in a certain sense, or preventing us from maybe breaking through to true insight. The idea that there is a thing in itself that I should be able to perceive, but that I can't perceive. In other words, behind every object, there's supposed to be something of that object that I can't perceive. And the thing that I can't perceive is the thing in itself. But all I get of the object is what the senses allow to come into me, and because they're limited by the sensing, therefore I'll never get the thing in itself. I'll only get a limited aspect of it through my sensing it. And Rudolf Steiner says, you know what, Immanuel Kant, and this is an interesting idea, but the fact is, he says, if we take this model seriously, there are only two things in the world, friends. There's really only two things. There are percepts which present themselves to our observation as content, and there is the thinking that we do about them and gain insight through intuition. And there really isn't anything else. If you tell me that something should present itself to me as a percept, but I can't perceive it, you have to prove to me that such a thing exists, or else it is a concept that is an abstract concept that actually belongs over here. A thing in itself is an idea of a percept that I can't perceive. It's an unjustified hypothesis. If you're telling me a percept should be there but I can't perceive it, I'm sorry, but if it's a percept, I should be able to perceive it. And if it's a concept, I should be able to think it. I can think the idea of a thing in itself, but if you're telling me there's no perceptible content to it, but it should be on the side, you're philosophizing into the blue. Sorry, Emmanuel, this is an unjustified hypothesis. This actually belongs over here. This is a concept, but it's an abstract concept because it's supposed to be a percept, but it doesn't really live on the right side. It lives as an abstract idea. You with me? Therefore, a thing in itself is nothing. Now, but on the other hand, let's be fair. What Kant was pointing to, what Kant was hoping for is, you're telling me that what I perceive is everything? No, it's not everything. But what I do perceive, I will be able to think. I will be able to find the concept of everything that I do perceive. Now, are there percepts that I don't have access to? Yes. But I can also extend my capacity and my sensitivity. I can develop the organs to perceive further and further and further. And what I actually do perceive will be a percept, and through thinking, I will intuitively come to the concept, and I will know what that is. But you can't prove to me that there's something that exists as a percept that I can't perceive. If it's a percept, show me. I want to perceive it. Otherwise, it's an unjustified hypothesis. So in this way, Rudolf Steiner, he breaks through the spell that Kant had really unwittingly. Kant did not mean to do this, friends. Kant was not an evil person. Kant was a wonderful human being who had tremendous capacities. But in a certain sense, he also was almost seduced into the idea of the thing in itself. And in a certain sense, that casts a spell on great minds. Great philosophers are still working under the idea that there is a thing in itself that we'll never know. And Rudolf Steiner, through spiritual science, then breaks through. He says, actually, there's nothing we can't know. All we need to do is to, if we're searching for percepts beyond what our senses give us, there are such percepts available. We have to develop our spiritual sight, our spiritual hearing, and our spiritual intuition, and we will extend our capacity to perceive. In the same way, we'll have to extend our capacity to intuit, but we will still be able to know those things. So there's no limit to knowledge at all.